Hey there, little buddies, and welcome to yet another edition of the Boob Tube Buddies podcast, in which we will be discussing episode 3 of the Starz series, American Gods, entitled Head Full of Snow. I am Mothman, and I'm joined by my fire-eyed lover, Devin.
Ooh.
How are you doing?
So good.
Right? How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I am pretty excited to get into this episode because, I mean, we'll dive into it later, but lots of interesting stuff, I would say.
Yeah, again, it chose to be more visually appealing, but I'm excited to dive into it, but why don't we do a little news first?
News? Oh, God. Okay, that sounds like a new segment. That's pretty exciting.
New news.
All right, perfect. Well, the numbers have just come out from Social Security for the top baby names of 2016, which I don't know about you, but I normally wouldn't care about, but there's kind of an alarming trend. You want to know what it is?
I think it ends up, again, following some actor or actress, doesn't it?
Kind of. A fictional character. So Kylo is in the top 1,000 baby names for boys.
What?
Right? Whereas in the year prior, it was in the top 4,000. So it's like growing in trend. Right now, last year alone, 238 children were named after this whiny emo Star Wars villains, which, if my estimation is correct, that means that 238 fathers are going to be stabbed and thrown off a bridge in 30 years.
Yes.
Right?
Poor Chewbacca.
Yeah. Oh, God. I can't do it. I could not. I can't do it. Anyway.
Oh, Kylo. That's going to end up going one of two ways. Either all those kids are going to grow up to be whiny little black mascara-wearing punks, or they're going to turn around and have one of the best villains of all time. We won't know for another 2 episodes.
Yeah, that's true. He might turn things around in the next. Yeah, it's true. Anyway.
I had thought I had read that the most popular baby name was also a fictional character. Oh, no, not...
It is a fictional character.
Emma, and it had something to do with Emma Watson.
See the joke I made? It is a fictional character. It's Noah from the Bible. That was the number one name. Anyway. Religion jokes. Well, it's American Gods. We're allowed to do that.
Well, did you also see the MP3 format's dead?
What? No, tell me more.
Yeah, it's dead, which blows me away because it, for someone that spent so long pirating this stuff, I feel like I own MP3. The actual founders of MP3 don't get to decide when it's dead. When torrent sites decide it's not downloading it anymore, then we'll say it's dead.
Yeah.
But the Institute has been officially licensing the audio format will stop as newer audio formats such as AAC are more efficient for modern streaming services. Real question is how many years will this pass before hipsters decide it's cool again and start buying vintage iPod classics offline, whipping out their dope skull candy earbuds and start having listening sessions with their friends while exchanging bong rips?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a pretty good question because right now, like, vinyl's all the rage. There's actually, like, limited edition VHSs and cassettes coming out, like, with limited releases of stuff. So, and vinyl, I get, like, there's this giant argument that it sounds better, it sounds warmer, but no one has ever said VHS or cassette sounds better. So just because this is a outdated format that doesn't sound as good, I still think there's going to be those hipsters that want to bring it back in, like, another 15 years, right?
With the way this vintage stuff comes back, can you imagine seeing a bunch of like in a couple years, now that we have like stabilization technology kind of working out in a way that they'd be doing like these little Walkmans with little 45s on them?
Yeah, maybe. Like somehow we do vinyl, but just miniature.
Skip protection.
Well, look, I got one more news story that's kind of interesting. I think we got time for this, which is that NBC's Timeless was canceled last week, which I don't listen or watch. I don't think anyone on Boob Tube Buddies watches. But it was uncanceled 3 days later due to pressure from the fans, which, I'll be honest, seems kind of weird because if there were enough fans to justify it, doesn't that just show in the ratings, which is how they made the decision to begin with? Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we see this all the time. I mean, there's these huge fan bases, and I don't know how they end up analyzing the statistical data to make them decide, all right, there's enough power here to actually start this back up. But
or maybe it's like
and
they decide, okay, not only will we bring it back, but we'll do like a strong merchandising push because there's avid fans that will like that's where we'll make our money.
Right. I mean, yeah, I don't get it. I've never understood it. I'm trying to learn the patterns to it because, like, a good example would be like Veronica Mars. The show got canceled, and then there was enough fan stuff that they ended up coming and doing a movie. But then they'll turn around and Hellboy has a huge cult following, and people are constantly pushing for it. And I mean, even Ron Perlman sits there and spends most of his time going, "Hey, dude, let's pick this back up. I'm ready to go when you guys are." And they just will never get pushed through.
Did you not see the new news though?
Yeah, I did, and I'm stoked as hell for it.
They are apparently going to make it, but now of course it's not Ron Perlman and it's not the same director. Which,
yeah,
I mean, I do like Stranger Things, but we'll see that. But ultimately, what I think we've decided to do as an entire Boob Tube Buddies group, because we've realized this has started to happen, we're not going to waste our time on Little League stuff like, Hellboy. We're going to start a GoFundMe campaign to resurrect the landmark series The Ghost Whisperer, starring Jennifer Love Hewitt, that was tragically canceled in 2010.
Oh,
okay,
that sounds like so much fun.
That's totally like a Colbert or a John Oliver stunt, where like they just send their legions of fans to accomplish it. Meanwhile, with us, that would equate to like a $3 Patreon account. But anyway, hey, there's a plug. We have a Patreon account. Rate us on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe. We're going to be trying giving you more, info in the beginning that's just fun, general listener stuff before we get into the spoilerific stuff that I think we're about to get to, because we're about to do Summon It Up in a Tweet.
Oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up, summon it up, oh yeah, we're summon it up, oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up and up.
Tweet. Okay, you were laughing really hard at your own one as you were creating it, so I'm gonna let you go last because I'm gonna assume yours is better than mine, and I'm gonna read mine that is somehow like 14 characters over and still not very good, but it kind of rhymes. So, ascending to heaven with no plot in sight, taxicab lovers banging in the night, really cool visuals keeping me intrigued, but gods as grifters, psh, please.
Nice.
There's mine. There you go. All right. Have at it.
All right. Don't know which had less hair, the cat or the cartoonish cock. Round 2 of checkers. Get it? Wednesday steals the show again, but we focus on the snow.
There we go. All right. And that was Summon It Up in a Tweet. Okay, so we're on the 3rd episode. I really, once again, kind of like last week where they had the Mr. Nancy opening, like I really liked the opening scene with Anubis, the god of death, taking her to heaven. Did you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, both the show and the book, I always enjoyed these coming to America stories, and they always stand out. And there's one more that I really liked, which I'm hoping we'll get in the next few episodes. But yeah, this one in particular was done really, really well. The visuals I thought were great, like the staircase and that the map painting towards the end was pretty nifty, a little flat but very nifty. Plus, I like that you don't get a conclusion. You don't get to sit there and say, well, did she go off to where she wanted to go or did she not? You got to kind of fill in the gap yourself.
So for me, I really like these little vignettes, and they're cool, but they don't seem to have anything to do with the main plot, at least not yet. And yet we've gotten 2 of them of the like the African god, like sex goddess. We've gotten 2 of those that still have no bearing on the plot. So I'll be honest, like they end up being some of my favorite moments, not really the sex goddess ones, but this one and Mr. Nancy. But the fact that they have no bearing on the plot, they just seem weird. So what I wanted to ask you, without having you give too much away, in the books, do they do this? Do they just have random things that just 100 pages later have no bearing on anything, or is it more of okay? And it is
it builds kind of the world and the lore. And so like this whole show and the whole concept behind this is that we give power to the gods by believing in them.
Sure.
And so and that was what this whole kind of sequence did, was say, hey, you know, yeah, sure, you're a Muslim, but you gave power to me and loved me and worshipped me for a little while, and now I'm going to reward you for that. Or because you didn't continue to do it and went back, I'm going to curse you forever because I'm picking the door for you. But yeah, it does do this in the books. But the Viking one was...
Do these vignettes become like characters ingrained in the main overarching plot, or no?
No. Now, granted, they might do it in the show because we saw that. So the big event that was skipped out that I was calling out does happen in the show. And I have read, too, that they just renewed season 2 for this.
Oh, okay.
So we're 3 episodes in of 8 of season 1. So already we're not even depending on how they kind of chop up the story, we're not even 80 pages into the book yet.
Sure.
So we're very much, they're pulling ahead some of these Coming to America stuff. And I have a feeling that they'll end up running out of these stories while the show keeps going. So either they'll drop them or they'll just kind of do their own little new content. But it's all kind of the same type stuff as they're doing these, kind of Americana lore stuff. So it's easy to see that they're going to sit here and if they're going to keep the show going as long as they can, they got to kind of pretty soon it's going to be like Game of Thrones. They're going to run out of pages to write the show on. So they're going to have to fill the gaps with stuff that they've created. Whether or not the showrunners are going to do it or Neil Gaiman might.
Yeah, well, I mean, Gaiman's supposed to write some of the episodes in this season. He hasn't written any yet, but he apparently does write like 2 or 3 of them. I couldn't confirm which ones. It was just, I guess, in an article at some point. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe he'll plot them and someone else actually wrote the script. But does the sex goddess become a character? Because it seems weird to me that they've done 2 of her stories.
Yes, so...
Okay, that makes more sense. So that
the hint
is my complaint then, because they all kind of seem like they're disparate, but like I'm maybe never going to see Mr. Nancy again in the show, or I'm never going to see Anubis again in the show, yet I'm going to see her. And I think that's kind of the trouble with different mediums and adapting things, right? Because like comics do weird stuff like this all the time, but they also end up having a little thing above it that says epilogue or a way to tie it in, whereas they don't do any of that. So I definitely still feel like there's a better, like, not saying they shouldn't have included them at all, but like I feel like there should have been a better way. Even something dumb like, I don't know, and this is obviously something that you would have developed if you're a producer, but just spitballing, like even something dumb like having Shadow as he's going around with a guy that's claiming to be a god and he doesn't quite believe it, and he's interested reading about this or learning about this cast of characters, even if he was just on his phone, like reading articles about different gods and stuff, and that's where the vignette would go into, and like it would give life to some of these smaller gods.
You're gonna see a tie-in later in the story that does kind of give purpose to it, and there is a way to tell whether or not it's bearing on the immediate story or whether it's lore, and it's subtle as hell. So I the only reason I know it is because I've read the book. But have you noticed as they're cutting into the scene, you either see Coming to America or Somewhere in America, and that's going to be the big hint, is that when you go into a sequence and you're seeing this Coming to America, you're just kind of building the lore on the gods and how they kind of got here. The Somewhere in America actually has bearing and tying to the actual immediate, maybe not immediate actions, but the actual narrative of the story.
Somehow I don't feel like I've even noticed Coming to America. I noticed for the first time maybe on this episode Somewhere in America, which I thought they did and part of it, like they do some really cool stuff with just the visuals. So Somewhere in America is just graffiti on a building that otherwise is unassuming. Another really cool visual trick they did earlier was, later was, I can't remember his name, but the salesman that was waiting endlessly for the dude and then meets that Middle Eastern god and makes love to him. He, as he's waiting, they have like the wall behind him as a clock.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, he's sitting on the against the wall that otherwise we saw was normal, and then it becomes a clock with a ticking going behind it, just like a kind of cool visual element.
The visual elements in this whole show are phenomenal. I like the subtitles that they had with the cab sequence was something
great
I had never thought of before, but was bloody brilliant. And that's what I think is kind of the saving grace of this show, behind the of monologues where you have phenomenal actors really holding the scene. If it wasn't for the visuals and it wasn't for this amazing cast, I just don't know if I would be wanting to keep watching it. Now, I want to keep watching it, but it's because of those two main things that keeps me going. Although the sequence when which I know they had to do this to keep it from, you know, to put everything into it without, you know, bypassing the censors. The turning over to the dark, weird, shadowy thing during the love scene was a little odd.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know do you know what god that's supposed to be?
Well, he's just an Ifrit. Ifrit. I always call it Ifrit because of Final Fantasy.
Oh.
But he's an Ifrit. So, and I think at the beginning, so he's a Jin.
Oh, a Jin. Okay.
Yeah, and so one of the things that they're talking about in that sequence is he's always getting confused for a genie. You know, subtle racism here in America.
Oh. Gotcha.
I really liked this. This was aside the kind of coming to America thing. So there's not an immediate, you know, story element to it. And I liked reading this one in the book simply because it caught me off guard. You don't, maybe it's just my own ignorance, but I don't typically end up thinking, I don't immediately sit there and go, okay, two Middle Eastern dudes are gonna end up having a love affair. You know,
well, yeah, I mean,
it caught me off guard. And
sure, I think it catches you off guard for a few reasons. Like, one, I'll be honest, you just don't see male-on-male love scenes in TV, mainly just because there's been a stigma. So I think it's great that they're doing that. I think the other thing, though, too, is in general, it's just the last place I thought it would go in a cab scene with it being a mythical creature, right? Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, the sex goddess one you're thinking about because it's a sex goddess, but, you know, not this. But yeah, they kind of, being that it isn't really, I don't know, I guess if it was a god or something that had something in the lore where, you know, it transports you to another realm or something, you know, there would have been a spin, but it was very clearly just, let's just go to this different dimension as they, you know, orgasm, because we can't really fully show that. And, you know, so they did what they did, but it was a little jarring, you know, so they're pushing boundaries, but they also can probably only get away with so much.
And one of the things that just didn't get, so I don't know if you picked up on it, they changed places, basically, and that came across better in the book than in the sequence, is that the whole idea was that they switched bodies, and so he got to leave and go back to his homeland, the Ifrit, and the other guy just kind of ended up staying in America and took over his life, which is interesting because you don't.
That at all. Okay.
Yeah, it really did not come across properly. So there was it was a pretty long short story in the book that, you know, he was just miserable. He had come over to sell stuff. The only reason he got the job was because it was his brother-in-law. His wife hated him. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, he kept trying and trying and trying, but he hated it. And that's when he found the Ifrit and said, I would much rather live here. And that's kind of how that whole story kind of came about. I do got to say, you sit here and we have these kind of, you know, we do the whole standards and measuring sticks and how Hollywood holds women to like these really ridiculous standards. Uh-huh. Can I just say that every time you see a dick in these shows and movies, they make porn star people put them to shame. It's so jarring to sit there and be like, Jesus, that's a horse cock.
Well, at first, like, it was a weird cartoonish, like, one.
Yeah.
But it, like, they had it almost completely flush with his chest, which is just weird because he's laying on his back, and, like, I've never had an erection where it just, like, looks like it's taped to my stomach. So that was what was more jarring to me. But yeah, like, the like boyfriend that was the best friend of Shadow that was cheating on the wife, like the one they showed there too. I think that is just kind of the standard. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. I'm sure we'll have a like a manism movement in 40 years once things equal out again. Right now, it clearly is not appropriate or needed. But anyway.
It makes me feel like a jerk just to be like, hey, dude, come on. I'm feeling a little inadequate, and that's not cool.
Right.
It's like that, but it's like
I'm not supposed to feel that way. Yeah. I'm a white male in America. This is ridiculous.
I just wanted to interject and say.
No, I definitely appreciate that. The other stuff that goes on, we get some more with, like, Shadow, in which case, this is when I'm really starting to question the motives. Like, other than the coin toss, he's about to potentially go to, and I did love the scene, but he's about to potentially go to jail, and he's still willing to do it. I mean, he goes into the bank when he says we're about to rob a bank. Like, why would you do that?
And this is his whole kind of character, which it's just not getting portrayed in the show. And I get why, because in the book, he's very bland and very just kind of there. And I think that's because this story, while he's the main character, it's not about him. It's obviously about these gods. And that can't come across in TV. But it all does boil down to the fact, I guess the best way to say it is that Wednesday has a charming power that gets people to do what he wants. And that's the only way I can kind of put it into the show, but it definitely doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Sure. Well, and is that part of the lore of Odin that you know? Like, I know the whole powers over storms and those things, which, you know, they still haven't explicitly said that's who he is. Mike talked about it last week. You do get this episode where, you know, he clearly makes it rain, and the girl even says, I can taste, you know, you in the rain. It's clear he has these powers. Like, there's no question about it. You know, it's obvious he made it snow, not Shadow, but he's, I think, trying to illustrate a point for Shadow, or, you know, that type of thing. So anyway, like, is there like is it just that he's a charming, charismatic dude, and that, you know, Shadow has nothing else to lose, and he's interested enough and he's seeing enough weird things that he wants to follow it to the conclusion? Or is he supposed to actually have kind of this coercion power?
I think a lot of it ends up just being Shadow is nothing, and he has to have something just to have a purpose.
Sure.
Definitely in the show, Wednesday comes across as a trickster and a charmer. And they almost even kind of turn it into a magic kind of thing with him touching the dashboard and the radio coming on. But the interesting thing is that, because if he, I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but fuck it, we're spoiling everything, right?
Well, I mean, don't spoil it for me.
Okay, all right. Well, then we'll wait till the next episode.
Yeah, I mean, but what I will say is you touched on something that I do like. I mean, we're gonna go. He's Odin, right? So we spoiled that, but Odin's sons are Loki and Thor, right? And Thor is the god of thunder. Loki is the trickster. So that in of itself, even if it's not really a thing Odin was known for, the fact that he, you know, like father, like son, you know, you kind of reflect certain traits of your father. So to have him have this kind of trickster quality where he's using charisma to get his way, like, I don't think that's the most far-fetched thing in the world. So it does kind of make sense. You know, I also thought, and I don't know who these characters are, you know, but like the older lady and then the girl that was on the roof that gives him the moon, which is really a coin. Like, I like that scene as well.
I liked, the first thing I get put off is, like, if you're in the middle of Chicago, you're not seeing those stars. Because you just can't see stars in the city.
But if you're
like
God,
that.
Right?
Well, yeah, I guess
like
if you can.
The skies aren't the skies like parted and completely clear, probably because of Odin.
Or yeah, I guess she might have a power over the sky as well.
See, that's the problem with all these deities. You just get to, like, you have to throw so much logic out the window. It's like what would normally be a complaint, like, you can pretty much explain away.
Yeah, you have to suspend your disbelief, which you're gonna have to.
That's true.
But I do like that she had the kind of the control of the sky, and we get back to the whole coin thing, and that, coins. We saw it with the leprechaun dude. Is that you're starting to see kind of the power of these coins that are having, and it's almost, this is where Shadow and Leprechaun end up, kind of having a little in common as much as they hate each other. Is that Shadow is giving a lot of the power to these coins just because they're gonna get it thrust upon him as almost, and he's just saying, well, this is the moon, so this coin's gonna have the power of the moon, and that's kind of the whole concept behind the story, is that they're only there because we give them the power to be there. And it's especially kind of cool when you think too, have you noticed that when they talk about, Wednesday said it best in this episode, is that he's talking about how there's not just one Jesus, there's actually like 18 Jesuses
all Jesuses
over the place.
He's like, he talks about the Mexican Jesus. He's like, that's not a racial thing. He just, got here illegally. Because they came illegally and worshipped him.
So there could be an Odin overseas still. There could be a leprechaun all over the world. There could be Chernbog. There could be one still over in Czechoslovakia. You know what I mean? So
that's a good point, because you think about, like, Odin in the Norse region, they probably have like a very Nordic looking, gray bearded Odin with an eye patch that like looks like a Viking, and here it's kind of like this modernized version from just whatever our culture is and whatever people that have come over here, and he obviously doesn't have this tremendous amount of power, like he's having to get his money and make his living grifting, so it kind of that makes sense. Yeah, it's a good call out.
I think it's a good thing to note too that that just plays a big part, and maybe that might be Gaiman's underlying kind of meaning behind the story, is how narcissistic our country can kind of be, that Nancy just, say left Africa and came over here because America's better. He just came over and there's not a version of Nancy still in his home and in his birthplace. Same thing with Odin, same thing with, the Ifrit. There's just kind of this thing where we just kind of assume we're where everyone wants to be, and maybe that's the melting pot, maybe that's a strength, but also it could be just a little bit of a shocking, like, hey, why are we assuming here's the place we all congregate?
Yeah, gotcha. Well, at this point we'll still dive in just a little bit more, but first let's throw to Mike with his Am I Myth Taken segment, and then we'll also do an ad, and then we will be right back.
Preacher don't preach.
And now, here's Mike.
Hello and welcome to another I May Be Mistaken. I'm your host, philosopher Mike, and let's go ahead and jump right into it. So this week, it began in episode 2. We met the Zoria sisters, and in episode 3, we got a lot more of them. So that's who I'm going to talk about tonight. The Zoriai, also known as the Auroras in Slavic mythology, are typically just the two main sisters, but in American gods, we get 3 of them. So it's Zoria Utranyaya, it's Zoria Vechernaya, and it's Zoria Polunochnaya, right? So I can't believe I got that out. So despite the complicated names, they serve a kind of important purpose in Slavic mythology, and we heard about that in the show, where Zoria Utranyaya is the morning star. She opens the gates of the sun god's palace so that the sun god's chariot can go out there and put the sun up in the sky, which is, it sounds familiar because it's in better known Greek mythology as well. At least the chariot part of it. But the sun god in Slavic mythology is Dazbag, who is also here and there referred to as the father of the Zoriai. where Utrnyaya is the morning star, her sister Vechernyaya is known as the evening star, and she's the one who closes the gates after the chariot returns. And she's also commonly associated with the planets of Venus and Mercury. So that those kind of astrological things seem to play into mythologies all across the world, and Slavic mythology, of course, is no different. But what's really interesting about these sisters, at least in the television show, is this third sister. So Polunochnaya is called the Midnight Star, and she is referred to in Slavic mythology here and there, but usually not by name. The name itself seems to be a creation, as near as I can tell, of Gaiman. Like everything about her is pretty much a Gaiman creation, which is really cool. But there is a kind of a theory out there that he created her. Well, that's not true, but he gave her personality, gave her body. He gave her a purpose. So like he really built the mythology kind of on his own, which is super cool. And the Zorya also, sometimes you see him referred to as the Zvezda, but this is also interesting because these are like two other sisters who are sometimes referred to him, and they tend to be the groomers of the horses, right? So Slavic mythology is really different because there's no first-hand accounts of anything. So like Greek mythology is what I'll go for because it's the one we're most familiar with, but also Nordic mythology, which will play a role here. Those gods are considered those stories are considered primary stories because the heroes interact with them, or they interact with people on a regular basis. Well, in Slavic mythology, there's not a whole lot of that, so we don't have those stories. So it's a little less clear. And in this case, we get the main backstory. So Utrnyaya and Vechernyaya, regardless, they're the guardians of Samargal. We heard about this in the story from Polunochnaya about the dog and the stars. Sometimes in the mythology it's a winged lion, but this beast in the stars, at any rate, that is tied to Polaris that they watch, and if it should ever break free, it'll devour the universe, or sometimes it's the world. But probably if we think about those older Slavic peoples, probably the world was the universe, right? But another interesting part about these sisters is that the two main sisters, Utrnyaya and Vechernyaya, are also sometimes considered to be the mothers of the stars, and they're married to the god of the moon. And that's kind of a cool twist, especially given like in Gaiman's book, Polunochnaya is a virgin. We hear her say it, that her fortunes are better because she is a virgin. So we can kind of read into it that the other two sisters are not, especially given what we saw between Wednesday and Utrnyaya, right? So that's about all I got for you this week. If you guys ever have any suggestions on something you want me to cover, go ahead and hit me up. I'd be happy to do it. And I will see you guys next week. All right? Peace.
Preacher don't preach.
Hello, Robo Fox Man here to tell you about Boob Tube Buddies' new sponsor, Blue Apron. When I cook for Robo Bethany and my beautiful children, it is a time that brings us all together. Blue Apron makes it simple and affordable for you to provide that wonderful time for your system error. This week I tried the recipe for, they have a wine section? 6 premium wines delivered monthly? Let's give this a whirl.
Ooh, that hits the spot.
If you're interested in
Trying Blue Apron anyway,
go to blueapron.com/BTB
to
get $30 off
your first order. It's a fantastic way to contribute to my drinking
problem, and it's amazing food
For you and the family.
Again, that's
www.blueapron.com/BTB.
Enjoy, little buddies.
All right, welcome back. Thanks so much for the philosopher doing his fantastic segment for our show, diving into the mythology of some of these characters in a way that we clearly aren't, and also the show clearly isn't, right? They're leaving a lot up to mystery. And I mean, let's face it, every god out there has its own multiple books about it, right? So it's just a lot to pack in. But I'm kind of curious about what's going on with the cliffhanger here with Laura.
Yeah, so this is this is the thing that I was so kind of confused why they skip it. So Laura obviously comes back, not to life, but we'll find out what she is in the next episode.
Okay.
But I was so kind of confused because this happens so early in the book. I mean, the night that they bury her, so they go back and he gets beat up by the technology guy. He had just buried Laura, and he sits there and goes back into the room, and he has his bubble bath. And when he comes out of the bath, Laura's in the room then. So right at that first episode, Laura should have been there. And they talk and they do their thing, and they'll have the discourse that they have in this next episode. So I don't want to go too far into that. But it's funny because, like, so it all happens around the time where they're in the motel. He comes out, he goes, talks to Wednesday, he had charmed a teenage girl or a young girl into sleeping with him. And even Wednesday this was like a real missed opportunity, because Wednesday in the book even sits there and goes, well, she's back. Oh, well, did you fuck her? You should have. So, so we'll get, maybe that does still happen, but I guess I don't understand the point of making it happen later in the story. I'm not seeing why they put it off further. It just doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense that it would happen in what it did in the book. So maybe I'm missing something. Maybe somebody else can point something to me on why they would do this. Yeah. It might fall back to they are doing this in 8 episodes, and then they got renewed for another season, so they're trying to figure out how to stretch this out as far as they can. But I mean, that's a very big event that for a little while there, I didn't even think they were going to do.
Well, yeah. So he goes to dig, Leprechaun goes to dig up the wife. There's a hole in the coffin, and then it's empty, and then she's sitting on a bed talking to someone. So, I mean, we'll obviously find out more next episode, because it's very clearly, a cliffhanger, and will probably be the crux of that. Meanwhile, the stuff will keep going with Shadow. Otherwise, though, I don't know that there's actually a whole lot more to discuss. I don't know how you feel. I'm trying to think what else happened. I think we hit on most of the points.
I got a real kick about the pole going through the guy's head.
Oh, I forgot about that. And
it was like raspberry jam.
Yeah,
it wasn't even like guts.
It was great, but it also I was excited for a minute because that's David Foley from Kids in the Hall, which is like one of my favorite comedy shows ever. And so I was like, that's fantastic. We're going to get to see him for a bit. And he was dead immediately. Just immediately dead. He didn't even get to make any jokes. Like, I was hoping it would be road trip with that character for an episode or two, and then they'd part ways. But no, they just fucking murdered him.
He just wanted to spread the white light of the program.
Well, I also feel like I also feel like, and not that he's like a household name, but I feel like it also would have to cost more to hire someone like that for such a scene that has it's just a death scene, as opposed to just any other B actor in that age range, or not B actor. I mean, like unknown actor, not even unknown actor in that range.
I think a lot of people are fighting for this role. I think that's why their cast is so damn good. They've got a ginormous pool of people that wanted to do this project. I mean, they've been trying to do American Gods forever. It's a very highly revered book, and I think when they've signed the right showrunners, everyone knew this was going to be some Academy Award level stuff. Now, whether or not it would win is up for debate. Maybe time will tell. So far, visually, it deserves some award, because that title sequence alone, holy shit. Still, I keep watching it. And watching it at the beginning of every episode. It's gorgeous. But I definitely, that was just funny because the pole went through his head. And I'm like, ooh, toast.
It did. Cool. Well, yeah, no, I agree. The acting is top notch. The structure and pacing, I definitely think, is the biggest complaint I have here. But between the visuals and the acting, it still a totally worthwhile watch every week. So I'm kind of still in the same rating range as I have been, but I'm hoping as some of these plot points coalesce and some things happen, that maybe some stakes get raised and we see the full plot forming, that shit will ratchet up. So anyway, at that point, hey, support us any way you can. We're not necessarily even asking for money. Obviously, you can do the Blue Apron or Audible, get something for yourself, and also support us. You can do Patreon. But honestly, even just like following us on Twitter and then sharing out the stuff we put out so people can at least find us, like that's a huge help, and we love it. And we're just trying to grow our fan base because we love having these conversations with people. So anything else from you, Devin?
No, just share it with a buddy, share it with a friend, anyone else that can kind of shoot us some comments. We want to hear from you. And yeah, other than that, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, tie a bow on it. Do the full thing. You're basically there.
Do the full thing. All right, buddies. We'll see you next week. Golly G. Golly G, thanks for having me again.
Yeah. All right, later, guys.